My name is Epa Malo, and I am presenting this write-up together with Professor Jose Luis Usenda and Professor Jose Maria Meya. It is an excerpt from my PhD thesis that was submitted to WAM and defended last month. And this particular excerpt is on effects of public sector audits on tax-paying decisions and their implications for national development in Ghana. The outline of the presentation runs from the background of the study through the problem down to contribution to literature. Background. Tax revenues are considered very critical in the national life of every nation because they generally constitute the largest portion of public revenue, and they also are very critical in meeting the public expenditure, recurrent and investment expenditures. And because of that, every nation makes a lot of effort to ensure tax compliance. And Ghana has made a lot of efforts. In spite of that, compliance is, people are resisting. And we have a history, Ghana has a history of resisting against new taxes and increases in new taxes. For example, the VAT, the introduction of the VAT and so many other taxes had been resisted. But if you put that into the perception that taxes or tax-paying behaviors are seen in Ghana as evidence of subordination, mobilization in support of politics or politicians, or strengthening the corrupt nature of the political elite, it makes sense that tax compliance in Ghana is generally very low. In fact, it is said that it is lower than a third of the taxable population of the country. However, Tuba and other non-Ghanaian scholars also say that the tax compliance can be increased and be mediated by the provision of transparent information that show that the managers of the public funds were disciplined and had been accountable. And generally they have been using public sector audits throughout history to promote transparency, probity, financial discipline, accountability, and to ensure that corruption is prevented. They have also been using public sector audits to exercise oversight responsibility over the public payers. And Ghana has been auditing her public funds for over 100 years with a view to promoting transparency, probity, financial discipline, and accountability, as well as exercising control over the public payers and driving performance in the sector. But the reality on the ground is different. As we can see from this table, 2 years ago, 2018, as much as 13% of the national budget leaked out through corruption into individual pockets. Then 2016, 8%, going all the way down to 2009, as much as 50% of the national, the public funds ended up in individual pockets through corruption and mismanagement. And the picture is very worrying. It tells the problem that there is, it tells the picture that there is a problem in Ghana. It needs some research attention. Unfortunately, very little research has been devoted to this issue. Raham and Asedu and Defo have used auditing to find out how it can be done. but their efforts did not touch on the utility value of the audit on tax-paying decisions, and then the implications of those decisions for national development. And that underscores a knowledge gap that this study sought to fill. And it sought to fill this knowledge gap by proposing two objectives to guide the study. The first objective is to examine effects of the public sector audits on tax-paying decisions in Ghana. And the second is to examine the implications of tax-paying decisions for national development in Ghana. With these objectives to help direct and keep the study in focus, the researchers decided to test Rahman's position that financial auditing is the preferred and dominant weapon for fighting public sector fraud and corruption in Ghana. And they did that by hypothesizing that public sector audit has significant effects on tax-paying decisions in Ghana, and that tax-paying decisions have significant implications for national development in Ghana. With these hypotheses, the study was designed as a pre-test, post-test control experimental study, and they preferred experimental study because experimental studies generally focus on the cause-effect relationship, which the researchers thought was at the heart of this study. The experimental study was also preferred because it generally eliminates delays and non-return rates. And with that design, they decided to use MBA accounting and finance students, and their decision was based on the fact that the knowledge, the abilities, and then the experiences of these students is enough, are useful, going to be useful in answering the research, the questionnaire. And their choice is also supported by so many authors in the literature, including Eloyd et al., Rose, Norman, Rose, Asari, and Wright, just to mention a few. And with that, they decided to use a sample size of 188, which was the determination or the selection of this was guided by research advisors Sanders and et al. And the size was considered large enough because it is even larger than Asari and Wright 54 experimental participants that they used in their experiment. Then the experimental task consisted of three activities: the pre-test measurement, the treatment, and then the post-test measurement. Then the pre-test measurement and post-test measurement were 19 questions, and then the treatment were information extracted from the Auditor General's report from 2017 and 2018, and that treatment also included the objectives and the benefits for auditing Ghana's public account. The pre-test measurement was taken before from both groups, before the treatment was given to the experimental group, and when they had read through the information sheet, the post-test measurement was taken of both groups again. And the results, the data from the experiment were analyzed using analysis of variance. And the results show that voluntary tax compliance is significant, is statistically significant at 5%, which means that
2 minutes more.
And the finding is supported by Atuba's position, Rahman's, and Asiedu, And this led the researchers to accept the hypothesis that auditing public accounts has significant effects on tax-paying decisions. To conclude, public sector studies have statistically significant effects on voluntary tax compliance in Ghana, and the implications of this finding is that Ghana can use that to exact transparency, financial discipline, and accountability. They can use it to protect the public funds and to prevent corruption from occurring. They can use it to make savings for the nation, and they can use it to even maximize revenue, especially to reduce the dependency on debt financing. And that will be very useful because it will cut down the interest that has been killing the nation. And that will free money to help Ghana accelerate the socio-economic development of the nation. There are some limitations. For example, the participants were people with specialized knowledge, and so a further research with that can take into account a participant from cross-section of the country, that can be done. Then the researchers recommended that the public financial management laws should be enforced, and that the Ghana should make efforts to automate the public financial management system, promote the independence of the Auditor General, and ensure that the asset declaration law, which is already in Ghana, is enforced and is extended to all people who have access to public funds. The study extends literature by extending the debate from just fighting corruption also to tax-paying decisions. And it did so it also extends literature contextually, methodologically, statistically, and it is very relevant for policy. Thanks, and we will take questions if there are any. Hello? 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 Hello?
Hello?
Yes. I don't know whether you heard me. Hello?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah. We have finished, or should we go?
We will take questions at the end of all the presentation. So the next presenter will continue.
Okay.
Please stop sharing your screen for the next presenter.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I have to mute my microphone.
Okay. So I'll mute it. And thank you. I'm Albert Ajimabedu, and I'm presenting on the topic finance and economic growth in Africa. This is part of my PhD thesis in WAM, and together with my professors, Fernando Gallardo and Jose Maria Miller. This will be the presentation. Growth in Africa has been trending upwards since mid-1900s. The growth has been robust and widespread in several African countries as a result of improved macroeconomic management, good governance, and most importantly, a conducive environment for financial sector growth. Economic growth have been stable, especially after the 2008 global financial crisis. And economic growth has also been largely attributed to the growth in the financial sector, which is regarded as the most active sector of the economy. Growth in financial system and reforms in financial sector in many African countries has been known to support this improvement combined with political stability. Financial development in Africa is low as compared to other regions. However, growth in financial system has supported the growth, and it is expected that when financial development improves, it will lead to economic growth. We present a survey of African financial sector and linked it to economic growth, and these are some of the overview of African financial sector that we will want to highlight. Because of our time, I will not go through all of the slides. However, I want to present some important sector of the African economy. The first is the banking sector. This has seen a tremendous growth as a result of technological changes, competition, and financial sector liberalization. The banking sector in Africa consists of deposit-taking institutions regulated by central banks. And the central bank function is just to ensure the sound operation and safe banking system. They are independently run by various states, but work closely with the Ministry of Finances of each country. But the banking sector is mostly dominated by local banks, which are mostly state-owned. This phenomenon is now changing as a result of increase in subsidiaries of foreign banks. And one feature of African banking sector is the investment in government securities and mostly traceable, with reduced private sector credit. As you can see here, the depth of financial development as measured by the domestic credit to private sector is still shallow in African market, especially in the sub-Saharan Africa. And it is about 28% in sub-Saharan Africa compared to over 32% in the North African countries. Unlike the banking sector, the insurance sector is not well developed, and as compared to most emerging economies. They are mostly dominated by non-life insurance, with auto insurance holding the largest portion. However, the life insurance sector continues to grow as a result of improvement in awareness of the sector. Insurance premiums in Africa has been remarkably low. Even though it has been stable over the years, we can see that it is far below Africa and Oceania. As you can see, the last two is Africa and Oceania. Far a distance away from Europe, which is the highest, followed by the North America, and then Asia and the rest. Now, an important sector in African financial sector is the development of microfinance sector. Only a few proportion of Africans are covered in the formal financial sector. Hence, the emergence of microfinance sector have improved the financial services that is provided to the poor. It has ensured that Africans are now covered in the financial sector. Despite its recent challenges, it has ensured that there have been poverty alleviation in that sector. The fintech have been to be the driving sector throughout the world, especially after the 2008 global financial crisis. If you talk about fintech, we mean the financial technology that is introduced in financial services and is known to improve financial delivery. In the advanced economy, these changes are seen as a threat to traditional financial services, such as banks and insurance companies. However, in Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, financial service delivered through technology is creating unprecedented opportunity to achieve universal access to financial services. You can see that the explosion of financial services such as mobile money banking, branchless distribution, machine-to-machine lending, big data, and artificial intelligence is seen to improving the financial services that is provided to the poor. The stock market. Stock market has been seen extensive development. This is evident by in the proliferation of stock markets in Africa. In 1989, there were only 9 stock for Africa. 12 more were added in the 1990s. Currently, there are over 30 independent stock exchanges with 2 regional stock exchanges in Africa. And the stock market is characterized by, as you can see from the statistics here, capitalization with few domestic listed companies, small size of listed firms, as well as low levels of liquidity with few shares mostly dominating trading activity. Exception, however, is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which constitutes about 80% of the total market capitalization. As I said, because of time, I won't present all the slides. I will move on to the empirical side of the studies. Now, in issues in literature, we realize that it is no relates to economic growth. And before 2008, positive relationships were established. However, after the 2008 global financial crisis, this have changed. And when these are analyzed together, we've seen that they exhibit both positive and negative relationship. Also, authors like Shetty and Karumbi has found an inverted U-shaped pattern, which suggests that the positive relationship tends to negative relationship. Now, this study is premised on 3 main questions. Are there positive relationships between financial development and economic, growth, or does the inverted U-shaped relationship applicable to African economy? The empirical study, as I said, is premised on a growth model, which is proxied by REC capital per GDP, and it is known to relate to financial development. The FD suggests financial development and a set of control variables, which include the government consumption, proxied by gross capital formation, human capital measured by the percent of population participating in the labor force, and also inflation. For the modeling of this empirical model, we know that it presents a unique features because of our data, and as such, we are not only going to deal with stationarity of the data, but rather homogeneity and endogeneity, which is a serious concern in analyzing or modeling data. And as such, we adopted pooled OLS, fixed effect, and system GMM, in addition to panel threshold model in modeling our data. The results are clear that financial development is positively related to economic growth, as seen by these variables. We can see that they all exhibit positive relationship, except market capitalization that was negative in the GMM estimation. The control variables all exhibited their usual signs, suggesting that government consumption is negatively related to economic growth, inflation is positively related to economic growth, and investment is negatively related to economic growth, and so forth. Now, in order to answer whether there's a nonlinear relationship with economic growth, we use the threshold models, and the test of linearity with the bootstrap test of linearity shows that there's a nonlinear relationship with economic growth, between economic growth and financial development. And the threshold model enables us to group our data into 2 regimes. The regime 1 suggests a period of low state of that variable, and then periods of high state of that variable. So if you think of domestic credit, it suggests that at low state of domestic credit, it is positively related to economic growth, but at high state, it is negatively related to economic growth. That is how the treasury model can be interpreted. And the dynamic model, which is also a treasury model, however, deviates from the static model. Now, because of time, let me do the conclusion. We concluded, or the results largely confirm that there is positive relationship between financial development and economic growth. The results confirm the nonlinear finance growth nexus, but fail to confirm the inverted U-shaped assumption. Among others, these findings present crucial policy response in optimizing the assets in African countries. We read African financial market has not developed to the optimum, so there's an urgent need to improve channels that can also stimulate economic growth. Thank you. Okay, the next presenter will continue. Father Malo, I think your next presentation.
Hello, is that me at the next presentation?
No.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Are my slides shared?
Yes.
They are shared.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, I'm back again, and this is the second excerpt from the thesis that was presented to WAM and was defended last month. For those who are just joining, my name is Malo, and the paper is co-presented with Professor Risenda and Professor Mia, and it is on effects of the public sector audits on taxpayers' decision on the job retention of an indicted public official and the implications of those decisions on the public purse in Ghana. And this one was done as a result of the finding that audits have a significant effects on tax-paying behaviors. Auditing is generally considered a crucial principle in managing public funds because public sector is a network of agency relationship. And because it is a network of agency relationships, it is fraught with agency problems. And auditing can be used to help the incomplete situation problems in the sector. It can also be used to promote transparency, discipline, and accountability, and also to check corruption. And it is very useful in mobilizing public funds. It is also relevant for exercising control and oversight responsibility over the sector, the sector's fund. And as you can see, it's been done for thousands of years. Auditing has been used in the public sector for thousands of years to promote transparency, probity, financial discipline, and accountability. And Ghana has also been using it for a little over 100 years with a view to promoting transparency, probity, accountability, and then checking corruption. But as we can see from this table again, the reality is different. Corruption continues to escalate. beyond the imagination of any reasonable objective thinker. And in spite of that, there is very little research work in the area. And that is why the few research that is available is looked at, and then there is a knowledge gap that it doesn't cover effects of the audit, public sector audit, on the job retention decisions of an indicted public official and how those decisions affect national development. And with that, the researchers went on to develop or to set two objectives that are very similar to the first study, that public sector audits on to assess effects of public sector audits on taxpayers' decisions on the job retention of an indicted public purse manager, and to assess how those decisions affect the public purse and national development in the country. And again, using Rahman's position that auditing is very useful in fighting public sector corruption, they tested the hypothesis that public sector audits have significant effect on the taxpayers' decision on the job retention of an indicted public official, and that it has a taxpayer's decisions on the job retention of an indicted public official have significant implications for national development. Again, they used an experimental study for the reasons that the study is interested in the cause-effect relationship between the audit and then the taxpayer's decision, and the fact that experimental studies result are already always ready and there are no delays. Using the same MBA students, and then for the same reasons, the same sample size, because even Means and McDaniel used 95, whereas the sample size of the researchers was 188. Doing 3 experimental studies, the pre-test measurement, treatment, and the post-test measurement as it did, and the data that were collected were run again using ANOVA, and the results are different from the first study. The results show that the public sector audits are not significantly, statistically significant to affect or influence the job retention decisions, which is very unfortunate, because if that is not the case, the results have the tendency to encourage and reinforce the corrupt behavior of the public sector purse managers, as deterrence theory stated that deviant behaviors, and corruption is considered by the researchers as a deviant behavior. Deviant behaviors are freely chosen, and they are generally based on cost-benefit analysis. If the benefits...
Can you finish in the next minute? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. If the benefits outweigh the punishment, then they will go ahead and then commit the crime. And this result can also affect the government ability to mobilize funds, and as a result, it can affect national development negatively. Unfortunately, the results seem to be supported by the sitting president attempt to sack the Auditor General. And as a result of the finding, the researchers accepted the 2 hypotheses. And to conclude, public sector audit has no statistically significant effect on taxpayers' decisions on the job retention of an indicted corrupt public official. Implications of this finding are that It encourages and reinforces corruption. It can affect a public funds mobilization effort. It can affect the availability of funds and definitely the socioeconomic development agenda. And the researchers recommended that a further study could be done using a cross-section of the Ghanaian populace, and that the public financial management system could be automated. The study contributes to literature in the following areas. Thanks for your attention and for your corrections and comments. I'm done. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you. If you have any question, you can type it in at the chat. Jane Mark, I think you can do the next presentation.
Oh, what's happening? Ah, okay. So can you hear me and can you see me? Yeah, right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, Albert. So it's my turn now, I think.
Oh, yes.
Great.
Okay. After that, why will continue with the next presentation? So you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I will share my screen with you. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted to. You know the program already. Yeah. So I have prepared only very few slides. But anyway, let's start. And I would. It's a real pleasure. First of all, it's a real pleasure to be on board with you for this third Amenet conference. I'm the leader of the EU ESG Jean Monnet network, which has very close aims and objectives with the Amenet network. We have a lot in common. We work closely together, and we are, I think, very complementary in many respects. The EU ESG network puts more emphasis in terms of research and activities on East Africa, on the eastern part of Africa. But I will start to talk very broadly about regional integration in Africa before, perhaps, if time allows, focusing a little bit more on the ESG. But if we don't have the time, I had the opportunity to do this in Tangier at the first conference in Morocco. Therefore, so perhaps you will excuse me if we don't have the time. Nonetheless, if there is a region on Earth at present where integration is really high on political agendas, this region undoubtedly is Africa. African policymakers are considering ways of strengthening ties within and beyond their region. Borders, which are mostly, as we know, mostly inherited from colonial times, divide the second largest continent into a mosaic of more than 55 states, which is considerable, with substantial differences in terms of their cultures, their history, their size, their populations, their resources, the weight of their national economy. So in many respects, there is a lot of differences. There is a true fragmentation of the continent, which is inherited from the past, which counts, this continent counts as many landlocked countries as put together South America, Asia, and Central Asia put together. Yeah. So this fragmentation was sealed in 1885, Berlin Conference, where the where northern countries just shared the cake between themselves with very artificial borders, as we know. So this fragmentation has since then been a constant handicap for development, for economic transformation. It is one of the reasons for Africa's failure to deconstruct the colonial economy that it inherited at independence in the 1960s. Since the times of independence, Africa has gained a strong awareness that it really, really needs to overcome the undesired legacy of divisions imposed by foreign powers, and that it needs to empower itself and unlock its potential. And the key for this will be, or one of the main keys for this will be regional and continental integration. So from the 60s onwards, these newly independent African states started building intergovernmental organizations with a view to providing a more geopolitical cohesion, with a view to improving post-colonial economic circumstances. And it is important. I would just like to remind you of a quotation by Jean Monnet, who said in 1976, who actually wrote it in one of his books, nothing is possible without men, but nothing lasts without institutions. So institutions are very important. These states, nonetheless, widely shared an understanding of the need to progress towards some form of unification and put into place the institutions that were required for this. So more recently, there's been a growing awareness of the need for these countries to achieve collectively this critical mass, reaching a critical size at a regional level or at continental level with the African Union was perceived as an essential step for Africans to achieve the standing, the recognition that their continent deserved on the world stage. This is even more the case in today's rapidly changing world that is dominated by multilateralism, power relations between large continent countries like China, like India, like tomorrow Brazil, like the US, etc. So compared to these new heavyweights, Africa is a fragmented area, weakened by its countries' dividing lines. So African moves towards furthering integration could, to some extent, be interpreted as a catching up process with the rest of the world. Indeed, there's been a vast majority of nation states around the globe that are members of regional trade facilitations, structures, economic, financial, customs arrangements, or sometimes even considering political federations. Okay? There are 85% of the countries in the world belong to some form of regional integration scheme. Yeah, that's quite considerable. So building institutions is key to this process. There is a multitude of such groupings on all continents with varied levels of integration. And yet the African integration landscape and its context also appear to have certain features, certain distinct features and trends that distinguish it from the rest of the world. First, what are these different features? First, in recent years, this African desire to move towards increased regional integration has frequently appeared to go against a trend, a stream towards deglobalization, a deglobalizing stream. In the aftermath of the global financial crisis of 2007 and 8, the virtues of globalization, its social impacts have been questioned. Free trade arrangements have been under ideological attack. Many countries have appeared to slide towards nativism, threatening international organizations, making it more and more difficult to uphold internationalist values. And the COVID crisis has also induced in the Western world a willingness to repatriate supply chains to minimize external dependency. Now, these trends raise broader issues with regard to the place of Africa in the international division of labor post-pandemic. But precisely in view of such external challenges, increasing Africa integration appears essential to guarantee stability and to encourage trade and investment, to open up market, to open up new business opportunities, to enhance knowledge, to boost innovation. Integration is also a crucial tool for the regional economic communities and for the African Union to reach this critical mass I was mentioning before, and to make their voices heard on the international stage. So Africa is can potentially become the next global factory in terms of combined GDP, international investment, purchasing power. It may still be a backwater of the world economy, but and the level of intra-African trade remain the lowest of all. But Africa wants to play its full part in the global economy. And for this to happen, ways need to be found to make its economy work for Africans. In that way, integration will be instrumental. It may not be the magic solutions to all of Africa's problems, but integration is certainly one of the key instruments that will help resolving these challenges and provide more peace, more stability. That's a sine qua non for boosting international cooperation and attracting FDIs. I think I've only got 1 or 2 minutes left, so I'll have...
I think we can conclude in a minute. We'll be happy.
Sorry?
If you can conclude in a minute.
Okay, yeah, right. So my paper goes on and on to describe what makes Africa different from other models of regional integration in the world. I don't really have time. What I'll do is I have a slide here with half a dozen bullet points which concern the East African community in particular, which are arguably the most relevant integration model in Africa to learn from. So one of the ESC is one of the oldest and most established, most advanced amongst African regional economic communities. That's one of the reasons why the East African community is particularly interesting. It's also a union that experienced disintegration in 1977, only to be relaunched a couple of decades later at the end of 1999. So that's a very, very unique experience of disintegration and reconstitution of the path towards integration. The ESC's intra-regional relationships are today wider as well between its member states and deeper than ever before, although there are obviously clashes between Rwanda and Burundi, for example, etc. But progress has been made, and the ESC also has been very proactive in promoting initiatives at continental scale, such as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And in economic terms, it's one of the most promising growth areas of Africa, and it shows also striking resemblance with some of the processes undergone by the EU. And just a final point, I would like to have just 10 minutes, 10 seconds of your attention. My network, we are very soon, we are publishing this book, The East African Community. So a little bit of publicity, intra-regional integration and relations with the EU. So it's been the work compiled in one book that we have carried out in our activities in recent years in East Africa. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay. Thank you. The next presenter can go on. When? But Professor, stop sharing your screen so that we can. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, you can share your screen now.
Okay. You can see the presentation?
You can see the presentation.
Okay. I prepared the presentation in French, so I will switch to French.
No problem. Merci beaucoup.
Ok, merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Je me présente d'abord. Je suis Amenet. doctorante en 3e année à l'École nationale de commerce et de gestion de Casablanca. Je fais partie du laboratoire de recherche ingénierie scientifique des organisations. Aujourd'hui, je vais vous présenter mon étude qui portera sur l'impact de la volatilité du taux de change sur la performance financière des entreprises dans les pays africains. Et on a choisi d'étudier le Maroc, la Tunisie et la Côte d'Ivoire. Donc, pour ce faire, je vais suivre le plan suivant. Tout d'abord, nous allons commencer par une introduction. Je vais par la suite présenter le contexte de l'étude. On va passer ensuite à une revue de littérature théorique et puis empirique. Je vais également présenter les principaux résultats de la littérature. On va passer ensuite aux objectifs de mon étude, les variables choisies dans notre étude et finalement en conclusion. Donc, les dernières crises financières internationales ont mis en évidence l'importance du mécanisme monétaire international pour les entreprises. En conséquence, les variables externes telles que les fluctuations du taux de change ont pris un point important dans la détermination de la performance des entreprises et sont considérées comme des facteurs de risque importants. C'est particulièrement le cas dans les industries qui ont connu une mondialisation importante. C'est aussi le cas des entreprises effectuant des transactions de devises étrangères à travers des exportations et des importations de matières premières et des produits finis ou à travers l'utilisation de capitaux, de personnes et de processus étrangers. C'est dans ce contexte que la mesure et la gestion de l'exposition au risque de change est primordiale pour réduire la vulnérabilité d'une entreprise face aux fluctuations importantes des taux de change, ce qui pourrait avoir une incidence négative sur les marges bénéficiaires et la valeur de l'actif net. L'objectif principal de cette étude est d'étudier l'effet de la volatilité du taux de change sur la performance financière des entreprises dans les pays africains. Et comme je viens de le citer, en l'occurrence le Maroc, la Tunisie et la Côte d'Ivoire. Je vais commencer par définir un petit peu les concepts qui font partie, les concepts clés de notre problématique. Donc, je commence par la volatilité du taux de change et qui représente les mouvements de court et de moyen terme qui écartent le taux de change de tendance et qui résultent des fluctuations des devises. Par la suite, la performance financière qui est la capacité pour une entreprise à créer de la valeur avec les fonds qui lui sont apportés. Donc, il y a plusieurs indicateurs financiers qui permettent d'analyser la santé réelle d'une entreprise, tels que le taux de rentabilité, le taux de rendement des actifs, les besoins en fonds de roulement et de trésorerie ou bien d'autres. Et pour définir la relation qui existe entre la volatilité du taux de change et la performance financière des entreprises, il y a plusieurs études qui ont été faites. Je cite parmi lesquelles celle de Ayer et Chanet en 2007, qui suggère que le pouvoir de marché d'une entreprise donnée dépend non seulement des prix et des qualités de ses concurrents proches et des prix d'autres entreprises étroitement liées, mais également du mouvement du taux de change qui est fortement influencé par les transactions d'exportation de produits de faible qualité qui sont très demandés au niveau international. Pour expliquer la relation qui existe entre la volatilité du taux de change et la performance financière des entreprises, on peut se baser sur plusieurs théories. J'en ai choisi 4 pour aujourd'hui. Donc, le premier, c'est l'effet international de Fisher, qui suggère que les monnaies étrangères dont les taux d'intérêt sont relativement élevés ont tendance à se déprécier car les taux d'intérêt nominaux élevés reflètent le taux d'inflation attendu. À long terme, il semble qu'il existe une relation entre les différentiels du taux d'intérêt et la variation ultérieure du taux de change au canton, mais avec des écarts considérables à court terme. La deuxième théorie, c'est celle de la parité du pouvoir d'achat, et selon laquelle, soit un régime de change flottant, une variation relative de la parité de pouvoir d'achat pour toute paire de devises calculée en tant que rapport des prix de biens échangés tendrait à s'apparenter à une variation du taux de change d'équilibre entre ces deux devises. La troisième théorie est celle de la parité des taux d'intérêt et qui stipule que la hausse du taux d'intérêt domestique est généralement suivie de l'appréciation de la monnaie domestique et une baisse du taux d'intérêt domestique est suivie d'une dépréciation de la monnaie domestique. Cela indique que le prix des actifs joue un rôle dans les variations de taux de change. Et la dernière théorie, c'est celle de l'exposition au change, et selon laquelle les fluctuations des taux de change devraient affecter la valeur des entreprises multinationales, principalement via les ventes à l'étranger et les actifs nets étrangers. Ils doivent être libellés dans la monnaie nationale de la société mère. Donc, d'après les effectués, j'ai remarqué qu'il y a plusieurs échantillons qui ont été étudiés et qui sont différents. Il y a des études qui ont été effectuées sur des multinationales, d'autres sur des entreprises cotées en bourse, ou encore sur des entreprises exportatrices. Il y a aussi des études qui ont été faites par secteur, soit sur des entreprises agricoles, industrielles ou encore de services. Aussi, concernant les principales techniques utilisées dans les études empiriques, j'ai remarqué qu'il y a plusieurs modèles utilisés, principalement celui d'équilibre partiel, qui a été utilisé par l'étude de Shapiro, qui est considérée comme l'étude pionnière et la première étude qui a été faite pour analyser le lien qui existe entre la volatilité du taux de change et la performance financière des entreprises. Il y a aussi d'autres modèles comme celui de panel dynamique, le modèle de régression multivariée et le modèle structurel dynamique. Concernant les variables utilisées dans la littérature, il y a des variables propres à l'entreprise, telles que l'âge de l'entreprise, le nombre d'employés, la taille de l'entreprise. Il y a des variables dépendantes de l'efficacité des entreprises, telles que le taux de rendement de l'actif, la marge bénéficiaire de l'exploitation, et il y a aussi des variables dépendantes de l'environnement, telles que la qualité du système bancaire. Donc, pour les principaux résultats, j'ai remarqué, d'après les études effectuées, que peu sont les études qui ont démontré un impact positif de la volatilité du taux de change sur la performance financière des entreprises. Et je cite par exemple celle de Berman, Martin et Mayer en 2008, qui ont trouvé que le taux de change a un impact positif significatif sur les volumes d'exportation qui varient selon les entreprises, bien qu'il soit considérablement réduit pour les entreprises peu performantes. Par contre, il y a plusieurs études qui ont démontré qu'il y a un impact négatif de la volatilité du taux de change sur la performance financière des entreprises. Je cite par exemple celle de Kelly en 2016. Et les résultats de sa recherche ont démontré que la volatilité des taux de change a des impacts négatifs importants sur le taux de rendement des actifs et le ratio de rotation des actifs, montrant ainsi l'impact négatif significatif de la volatilité des taux de change sur la performance des entreprises au Nigeria entre 2004 et 2013. Donc, l'objectif de mon étude, c'est d'étudier dans un premier lieu l'impact de la volatilité du taux de change sur la performance financière des entreprises pour le Maroc, la Tunisie et l'Algérie, juste pour les entreprises cotées en bourse dans un premier lieu, et cela pour une période allant de 2008 à 2020. Dans un deuxième lieu, je veux faire la même étude, mais sur les PME, et dans un troisième lieu, faire une comparaison entre l'impact sur les entreprises cotées en bourse et sur les PME. Donc, pour les variables choisies, nous allons tester la relation entre le taux de change comme variable indépendante et la taille de l'entreprise, le taux de rendement de l'actif et le ratio de rotation des actifs comme variable indépendante. Donc, pour conclure, l'impact de la volatilité du taux de change sur la performance financière des entreprises peut être différent d'un pays à un autre, d'un secteur à un autre et également selon la période étudiée. Je suis actuellement en phase de rassemblement des données et je souhaite partager avec vous les résultats de mon étude dès que nous aurons testé la relation entre les variables citées. Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you. We have presentation. I have my last presentation, and then Akwasi will do the last. He's having challenges, so he comes and goes off again. If he comes, I will allow him. So I will do my next presentation and hope that by then he will be available. Thank you. Okay, thank you. This presentation is on the future of African financial market. And we are trying to model African markets with traditional models and then in cooperation with some machine learning tools. This will be the presentation outline. And then the opportunities, prospects, and challenges of the continent have frequently been trumpeted by several scholars and experts. And Africa is expected to be the last frontier of investment and economic development, considering its rapidly expanding market young and growing population. Africa was enjoying a sustained economic growth. However, the current pandemic has shaken somehow and also potential world economy, including African market. And this has necessitated a relook at the future of African markets, considering the new challenges that. And our study is basically to provide a review of the threats of the future of African financial market in the midst of the pandemic, using both traditional and machine learning tools. Economists are always interested in how easily economic can recover. And as seen, there are several research on how the 2008 global financial crisis affected the economy, how they were reversed and how they recovered. Similarly, the COVID-19 pandemic also presents an opportunity for researchers to find out how the economies can recover. This necessitates new research to enlighten how we can model the future of African economy. The data is basically macroeconomic variables as well as stock market data. That is how we use in the proxy of Africa. And the macroeconomics were solicited from World Bank Development Indicators, while the stock market data from data stream. We were going to use the traditional models like ARMA, Arch, GACH, co-integration, and then incorporate it with some machine learning. As any modeling, we will try and first look at how the variables behave over a period. First, we start with the stock market data. We can see from here the time plots of African stock prices. If you observe closely, there are two vertical lines. One is black and one is red. One is on your left, one on your right. The black one depicts the 2008 global financial crisis, whilst the red, getting to the latter side of the right-hand side, depict the start of the pandemic. If we look at the stock prices, the 2008 financial crisis did not present a uniform direction, as some markets, example, Ghana and Botswana and Tunisia appear not to have been affected by the global financial crisis if you look at the stock prices. However, if you look at the global the pandemic, all markets were falling. All the markets were falling. It is not only peculiar to African economy or African stock market, but every sector has its prices falling. Before we did the modeling, we try and incorporate some machine learning in order to prepare the data. And the principal component analysis were used to remove correlated features of the data which have little effect, and it transformed the data into fewer dimensions that was then used in the modeling. And as you can see, we also use the MSCI World Market as a proxy to depict how it follows the world economy. And you can see that most of the African stock market follow the world economy, the world stock market proxy, and then some also deviated. But an important thing is Ghana has a reduced dimension, and basically when we investigated further change in the indexes, I think in 2011, 2010 rather, they changed that. Now we start with a simple ARMA, and we realize that the AR term are significant in or except Egypt, Ghana, because the AMA has several shortfalls because it cannot also model returns very well. We use the gauge that was able to, if we compare the LLAIC and SIC of both, you realize that the gauge was superior. And the coefficient of the omega alpha and beta was significant at 1% and 5%. Or I think except only in Ghana that the alpha, which measures the arch 10, was not significant. Apart from that, all of them was significant. And the significance of the arch effect suggests that the current volatility is explained by information of the past volatility. I think these are basic inferences that we draw. And then the graph shows that there is presence of volatility clustering. But the most important is the alpha plus beta. Alpha plus beta suggests that there is, if we look at the alpha plus beta in all of them, they are close to 1, which suggests that there is presence of volatility persistence in the stock market data. We now move on to look at the macroeconomic variables, and we presented a simple correlation matrix to depict how they are related. I want to use the fast Fourier transformation to look at how each of them moves together, and we present an FFT of the GDP of Ghana and other indicators. We first use exchange rate, and then the second one on your right is inflation. You can perfectly see that the one on the left is GDP with exchange rate, suggests that both GDP can and exchange rate fall at the same time. But when we come to the inflation suggests an instability, and we suggest that there is an instability in inflation. Inflation is not stable, and it is dependent on government macro-prudential decisions. And we therefore highlight that the economy must, as a matter of urgency, deal with inflation. We now move on to look at the trend, and the trends present an interesting future. Paragraphs may be too many, so I will try and explain a few of them. Look at GDP here. Africa had a sustained increase in GDP. By the way, the vertical line suggests 2008. That is the global financial crisis. You can see that even after the 2008 global financial crisis, African economy were on the right. As I've presented earlier, this reversed during the pandemic, and it's highlighting some issues that need to be looked at. Let me look at the borrowing side. We see that Africa is still borrowing. The continent have a high borrowing, and then they are being it's a matter of concern to African economy. The degree of foreign investment has also have huge effect on the country finance. Then, as shown, the FDI have been increasing after some time. So let me move on to how these variables are related. We use co-integration as we economists will probably do. First of all, before the co-integration, we present a time plus of the variables that we use as proxy. We realize that all of them had were moving together until I think the 2008 or 9, before they all they drift together. You can see that they were all moving at the same time, and then they drift together. Related in the long run, or they are not related. And then the first small table here suggests Johansen co-integration test, which suggests that the null hypothesis of no co-integration among the variables is rejected at 5% level. And then we can see that the hygiene trade statistics suggest that there are about 3 co-integration relationship among the variables that we use. After establishing that there's co-integration, we now generated the long-run relationship and then the short-run relationship. And this one, the normalized co-integration, suggests the long-run relationship, the actual long-run relationship that is between GDP and the negative relation between exchange rate and GDP. There's also negative relation between inflation. But however, FDI and GDP have positive relationship, as we can see from their T values. But when we come to the short run, they were not significant. But the most important thing about the short run is the ECT, or the error correction term, which measures the model returns to equilibrium following exogenous shock. And the exogenous shock can be, for instance, the COVID-19. How will the economy return back to its normal, or if it is the growth rate, how can it return back to the economy growing? We realize that it is very, very small. I think the negative sign is expected, but rather the magnitude is about 0.15%, 0.15%, which suggests that the slow adjustment process to achieve long-run equilibrium. These results present extreme policy implications, and the summary of our presentation suggests that the effect of 2008 financial crisis and the current COVID-19 pandemic on African economy, 2008 did not readily affect all African markets. The effect of this pandemic is immediate, and it affected every African economy. And review of the stock market data also suggests that African stock market presents some good return. However, it contains some considerable level of risk. And the macroeconomic factors that was analyzed suggest, among others, these findings: that interest rate was higher prior to 2008, but however, there have been increased borrowing in the African economy. This has resulted in most African countries being debt distressed, and it's falling into a debt trap. African countries have enjoyed a steady growth over the years, and this are, however, expected to drop due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, comparing the exchange rate and inflation to GDP suggests that inflation is unstable in most African economies, which should be a matter of urgency. And then our co-integration results confirm that macroeconomic variables are indeed related to each other. But however, the error correction tends to suggest that African, when exposed to exogenous shock, takes a slow period to recover, which is a matter of urgency. We also found that the machine learning that was inculcated improved the modeling process. So we therefore suggest normally economists are more interested in how we can model to know what will happen in future, and we suggest that the machine learning that was introduced into our data analysis. Thank you. I am told Akwasi is here, so we will ask him to share his screen and then start his presentation. We have about 10 minutes. I think we are even past time. But Please, kindly share your screen.
Okay.
And then the noise at the background, if it can be reduced, we'll be very happy.
Okay.
Or if you cannot do anything, we will just manage.
All right. There are students around, so that will be a bit difficult.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm presenting on a topic, effect of financial development on economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa. Does threshold matter? And this is written by Professor J. Jose Emea and then Professor Eva Medina. Yes, so this research analyzes the effect of financial development on economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa. But if you go through the theoretical literature, like Levine and then Patrick, they recognize that once the financial sector develops, it spurs growth in every economy. However, empirical studies have been conducted to verify whether the theoretical recognition of the role of financial development on economic growth is true. And studies had mixed results. That is, some found that financial development has negative impact on economic growth, whilst others established that financial development has positive impact. So based on this results, theoretical literature, a new theoretical literature emerged, which focused on non-linear relationship between financial development and economic growth. And when we talk about non-linear relationship, we mean at what point does the development of the financial sector affect economic growth? Okay, maybe it could be a medium development or higher medium development or lower medium development or high development. So at what point should the financial sector develop in order to spur growth of a given economy? So authors like Jovanovic and then Greenwood argue for the fact that for finance to impact on economic growth, it must reach a particular scale. In addition to that, there should be some enable environment for financial development to impact on economic growth. And he classified them under institutional environment and economic environment, such as initial per capita income of that particular economy. So based on this emerging literature, establishing that there's no linear relationship between
I can see we've lost you. I can see, are you there? I think we've lost Akwasi. Please, if you have any question for the presenters, you can let us have it. And I think we have Akwasi back. Akwasi, unmute and then continue. We cannot hear you. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So I was saying that aside establishing what threshold levels of financial development that impact on economic growth, I was also interested in what threshold level should some enable environment attain for financial development to impact on economic growth. And basically, I was focused on the institutional environment. So basically, I use 5 indicators like the political stability, control of corruption, law and order, democratic accountability, and then bureaucratic quality. So what level should these institutional variables reach to enable financial indicators such as M2 to GDP ratio and credit to GDP ratio to impact on economic growth? In fact, this is not the first time of examining threshold effect of financial development on economic growth. There are some few existing literature that have examined effect of financial development, threshold effect of financial development on economic growth. Ibrahim and Alegedede examined such relationship, likewise Alabadi and Mazia. In fact, Ibrahim and Alegede were in Sub-Saharan Africa, but the gap in that particular study was that they didn't search for the enable condition, such as the institutional quality, the threshold that these institutional quality must reach to enable financial sector to spur growth for a given economy. So our study tried to fill in the gap by going beyond the indicators of financial development and also examining the threshold conditions of institutional variables. So through the endogenous growth model, we were able to arrive at this model specification. The JY represent economic growth, then the X represent the institutional variables such as the political stability, democratic accountability, and so on. And then we have the FD representing financial development. And here I use credit to GDP ratio and then M2 to GDP ratio to measure financial development. So if you look at a equation, the gamma there represents the threshold figure. So if financial development is below or equal to that particular threshold figure, what is its impact on economic growth? And if it exceeds the threshold figure, what is its impact? Okay, so but aside establishing the threshold condition for the financial development indicator, I was also interested in the threshold condition for the institutional variables. So you could see X is being put in a bracket, less than or equal to gamma, meaning what threshold figures, or if the threshold figure for institutional quality is less than or equal to gamma, what is the impact of financial development on economic growth? And then if you reverse it, if they exceed the threshold figures, what is the impact? So I deployed.
You have less than 5 minutes, so you have to hurry up for us.
Okay, so I use Hansen threshold estimator to establish the threshold figures for the financial development indicators as well as the institutional variable. So the first indicator is the M2 to GDP ratio, and this one measure the financial size of the economy. That is M2. The higher the indicator, it means that there are more banks springing up, there are more financial markets springing up, and they are going to offer services to households and firms in terms of investment and the loanable fund to enhance consumption and economic growth. So the threshold figure established was two, which are 5.96 and then 7.60. Model 1, model 2 up to 5 is a situation whereby we vary the indicator for the for the institutional variables such as the political stability and co. So looking at the threshold figure, when it is less than 5.8, you realize that it has broad money has positive impact on economic growth. But the moment it exceeds 5.8, it tends to be negative. And once it reaches 7.6, the impact tends to be have no impact on economic growth. Okay. But in terms of the institutional variables, these were the thresholds established. For political stability, the threshold is 3, corruption is 1, law and order is 1, democratic accountability is 4, and a bureaucratic quality is 0. What do these figures mean? It means that for financial development to impact on economic growth, the score for your political stability should be at least 3, and the corruption should be at least 1. Law and order should be at least 1. Democratic accountability should be at least 1, and bureaucratic quality should be at least 0. So when you read these threshold figures, you realize that they tend to have positive impact on economic growth. Okay, so if you recall, I was using 2 indicators of financial development, that is M2 and credit. So the threshold for credit is also 1.86, and if the figure is below 1.186, it shows that credit has negative effect. But when it goes beyond 1.86, it turns out to be positive, meaning that there should be some minimum amount of expansion in credit for financial development to impact on economic growth. So what are the conclusions here? So we established that countries in a region, that is Sub-Saharan Africa, must not exceed a threshold figure for 5.96 of raw money to GDP ratio, so that it will have positive impact. So meaning, as more banks are springing up and the ratio is going up, it might be disastrous for the economies of Sub-Saharan Africa. So they must check out the number of banks that spring up. Okay, some end up in the form of a Ponzi scheme and so on and so forth. Deposited lose their funds, and the public lose confidence in the economy and the banking sector. So they have to check the rate at which banks spring up. So the threshold figure says that it should be below or equal to 5.96. We also established that certain threshold levels of social environment must be met before broad money can impact on economic growth, such as the political stability, democratic accountability, and co. Also, using the credit, we established a threshold figure of 1.86%. In terms of the credit, if it is below 1.86, we don't experience any impact of financial development on economic growth. So any economy that wants to experience positive impact, it must go beyond 1.86. So we also find that there are threshold conditions for credit to GDP ratio. So what are the recommendations? Given these findings, we recommend that countries should implement policies to make their institutional environment conducive, so that financial development will stimulate economic growth in their respective countries. What are these enable environment? That is, policy options available to government to achieve this target include those that emphasize on improving institutional quality, such as enhanced legal protection of property rights, ease of doing business, and greater governance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Akwasi, and thank you everyone for joining us for this session. I think the next program will be the closing session, which will be at Ghana time 6:30. We have about 40 minutes to join that session. So if you have any question, I'm not able to see any question for any of the presenters. So Zoom will contact them personally, and then if you have any question, we can address it to them. In the absence of anything, I think we will close this session unless anyone have any issue to discuss. Thank you. Okay, in the absence of any question or any issue, I think I will thank you once again, and we hope to meet all of you during the closing session. And we thank Amenet for this opportunity also. Thank you, and see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.